Szanowni Państwo, zapraszam teraz.
Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to ask to the floor participants of the next debate, the new social contract, the Dr. Karolina Lewestam. She has been nominated to Grand Press Award. She's an editor in the Pismo magazine, and she will be discussing the new social contract with her guests. So I would like to welcome you to listen to this debate. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that the guests will soon meet me here at the stage, and in the meantime I would like to ask what the new social contract is. This is the topic of our panel. The new social contract is a kind of an agreement among ourselves, among our community, when we decide what the community should do and what individuals should do. From the times of Hobbes, who used this term for the first time in the right way, we do believe that we need this contract to make sure that our lives are better, because it's better to live within the community than to live on our own. But the recent times have shown that this agreement, this deal we have made, stops working. So the insufficient social mobility leads to frustrations and victories of populists. Also, this agreement ignored the topic of educating and looking after children, looking after seniors, and the demographic challenges show that this kind of support will be necessary. So under this agreement, under this deal, the care was responsibility of women. Thirdly, this deal ignored the community-related benefits, and the politics used to work in a similar work that it is working nowadays. So instead of being focused on social services, some inequalities were to be reduced by some individual transfers. So now we live in the times that are the times before the post-truth times. So we are talking about the real acceptance of the deal by us. So after the crisis in the year 2008, after the populism became victorious, after the political changes have taken their toll, and after the pandemic of coronavirus, we have decided that something must be changed, that we have to elaborate this new social contract. But what should we change to make sure that the state, the country remains that we are not frustrated? What the new world should look like? So this is the question I would like to ask my friends. We've got my panelists. We've got 45 minutes to address this question and to understand what should be done. So my panelists include Natalia Hatalska, who analyzes trends, who is the founder and president of infuture.institute. She wrote great books, The Age of Paradoxes, about challenge. It's a book about challenges that are very current nowadays. I have just finished reading this book today, and I really enjoyed it. Hello, Natalia. Dr. Ignacy Morawski, who is the founder and the head of the SpotData. He's one of the key analysts according to the top rankings, and some rankings rate Mr. Morawski as the best analyst. Mr. Maciej Bukowski, who is the president of WiseEuropa, a think tank. We have an online connection with Mr. Bukowski. Hello, Mr. Bukowski. And Wawrzyniec Smoczyński, in the past, he was the inside director, and now he's the director of the Social Scientist program at SWPS University. Hello. Shall I keep standing? Okay, I will start with a very strong question because we do not have that much time to to consider the new social contract. So, Wawrzyniec, what should be next after the neoliberalism? It will be only better. I'm not an expert in political ideas, so I cannot answer this question. I can only tell you my opinion as an observer of the idea-based debates. The criticism of neoliberalism has lasted for over 20 years. So now we are again restarting this criticism, and we are slowly thinking that some social, economic and political systems have to be changed. It's not an innovation. This is the continuation of the global debates of experts, of scientists. So I would like to enter the polemics of this freedom games concept. So I would like to treat it as an element of the creative discussion. I would like to, I do not think that an act of will is enough to establish such a new social contract. We can decide that now the situation has really evolved and we have to change our situation. So we can decide during several conferences that we have decided what about this new social and economic system. For the past decade, we think in the era of emotions. We started with the politics and social life that was very sound, that was based on the experts' knowledge. And now we have the situation where emotions rule. So this is like a trap during such debates, during such conferences. So we ignore some general social emotions, the social fear in different societies. It's mainly reflected in populism. So we mainly address the problems that are deeply connected with the emotions people feel when they observe reality. So we are trying to address these problems, suggesting very sound solutions. So the social contract is a very rational, very sound solution, which ignores in a way emotions of people, emotions that have been here for the past several years and that have evolved due to several crises. So we are looking in Poland at the 1990s, or the crisis of the modern liberalism, the climate-related crisis. It's quite popular among young people. I would like to give the floor to other speakers. When I was speaking with Mr. Jażdżewski about our panel, I said, it shows that we are very rationally thinking people. If we want to talk about the new social contract, if we want to endorse such a contract, so I would like to ask Natalia Hatalska. So to be able to talk, to be able to meet and to make some sound conclusions, we need a venue, a place, an agora. Now we are using the social media for this purpose. So we've got this atomization of different bubbles, algorithms that steer higher and higher emotions. So what should we do to make sure that we can discuss? Before I answer your question, I would like to say that we shouldn't get rid of the emotions, because human being is a kind of a connection. We are the heart, the body, and the mind that are not in specific boxes. We have the sound sound mind, and we have emotions. We need them. Referring to Wawrzyniec's contribution, I do believe that we can formulate this new social contract. Maybe it doesn't have to be done in such a rational way, but in the world of emotions, we forget about talking about something that is very common, that is the values. We think that we are very different. In a moment, I will address polarization. We think that we are all very different. We made a study, we performed a study at our institute, and we asked people, do you think that there are some common values that are common for everyone? And 80% of the respondents, and I'm sure they had different views, they said, yes, there are some common values. Then they identify 19 values that are of top importance to them: freedom, respect, tolerance, love, family. So there are some values important for them. And now we are all living in our bubbles, and we are unable to see some aspects that could help us to create the new social contracts. So, for example, we ignore some problems, and the emotions staying within the bubbles show that we are managed by technological companies, big tech, algorithms that lock us in these bubbles, and we are unable to see new things. And it just stimulates us, makes us more and more nervous. So this new social contract can be developed, but we have to change our perspective. In Poland, we do not like to talk about values, but first we have to have a vision. We have to decide which values are of key importance to us, and then we should follow this direction. But what could help us to achieve this approach? Maybe we should eliminate targeted advertisement. I also believe that people are responsible for the quality of their lives. Now we have learned how to operate in the word either black or white, either good or bad, either left or right. Today the word is very complicated. Everybody can do this, but we either choose economic development or climate changes. Now we should have an attitude, and of course we want to develop, but we also want to look after the environment. The energy is also important. So now this approach emotionally is very expensive because we have to receive two contradicting information. But if we work on this, if we shape this attitude, Leszek Jerzewski has mentioned it in his speech, it will help us to have a dialogue. We will have some common grounds. The polarization, either or attitude, is not very effective. So we have to accept paradoxes. I've got a question that you ask to people who think they are rational. So I would like to ask Maciej Bukowski whether it's possible that we should agree such a contract. You have developed a strategy concerning economy and impacts of coronavirus. Are there any chances in the pandemic to improve, to change the new social contract that would provide more safety to people? What are the chances? Hello? I'm sorry that I have not arrived to watch. I really regret it because this event is great and the panelists are outstanding. Well, we all live in the shade of the coronavirus now. For the past 18 months, we have been doing it, and probably the situation will still continue for a while. And this is not easy. But we forget that really it's not. Well, the way we behave, the technologies we use, we have lots of economic factors. We earn money, we have income. So the situation is not that bad. So this is like a transitional phenomenon. But when we look at the public opinion, coronavirus is perceived in this way. People do not care about it so much. Although many people died in Poland, 0.3% of the population have died due to the coronavirus. It is comparable to the other epidemics that took place, for instance, 100 years ago. And the societies used to function during the previous epidemics, although the world was completely different. In the past 100 years ago, infectious diseases and epidemics were something that reoccurred quite often. I think that the pandemic doesn't really affect the social memory. Very soon the pandemic will pass. The waves will come to their end. Of course, we have to suffer some hardships. We have to work from homes. We have to wear masks. We have to get vaccinated. So it affects the public opinion, but I still think that the pandemic is not that important. So the economists have discovered that the pandemic, although it was quite a shock in terms of the economics, I'm thinking of inflation, of the change in the demand, but our Polish economy has tackled it very well. The scale of the governmental interventions was quite big, and the pandemic also showed our standard behaviors. And we managed to cope with the pandemic, so I do not think that there is a need for any huge changes. Even if there are huge disasters such as wars. So, for example, the situation after the Second World War, these changes, the social changes, were huge. So, and still, the societies managed to come to terms. And I think that the situation after the pandemic will be similar. This is very interesting because we are all the time thinking about the pandemic either as a big disaster or big opportunity. Mr. Bukowski, do you think that coronavirus is not a non-event? And actually, Mr. not Mr. Bukowski, but Mr. Ignacy Morawski was asked to contribute. Whether coronavirus has initiated big changes. Well, when I'm looking at the economy, this crisis turned to be surprisingly shallow. The world has managed to cope, but it has interfered with the global foundation. Well, it has accelerated changes in the areas where these changes were needed. So I think there are three classical foundation of the liberal order we used to have for 4 years. So globalization, taking care of the budget stability, so stable money, stable budget, and the third aspect, concentration on freedom of economic activity, protection of private property, and trust in dispersed processes. So people, just like ants, will be following different directions, but finally they will produce an ant mound. So, of course, there were lots of problems as far as the budget is concerned, as the dispersed processes are concerned. As regards our belief that the foundation of development is the stable budget and money, I think we are starting to think that the stable employment is really the foundation. Leszek Jażdżewski, in his introduction, referred to Keynes. Keynes started talking about the philosophy of the full employment, that the state has to maximize the employment. So it will affect inflation and other economic values. It's a technocratic concept, I think. So we have the next era of trust, of belief. We think that we have to isolate people from the economic risk relating to employment. That means that people are more exposed to other risks. But there is even a greater change in the belief in the dispersed processes and the private property. I don't think that we are getting back to the socialism-related concepts, but there is, we often hear that future is the policy choice. That means that we control the future. The future is not a result of spontaneous processes, just like these ants that start building the mound. It's a construct that we can think out. So climate policy, the biggest economic interference in Europe, in the United States, the situation is different, but European politicians invented the green economy, some specific parameters for this economy, and they believe that the system will adapt to this concept. So if we manage to reach these objectives, maybe we should identify such objectives for poverty, for education, for any other social problem. So we are starting the era of believing that the future, that we will create the future, that the future will not create itself. So these are two processes that have started before, and I think the pandemic provided a new impetus to them. When you are saying that now we can see that we can create the future, and we feel this, using the example of the environment-related policy. So I think that it's not what most citizens of the world feel. I would like to add another thought. Another philosopher, John Stuart Mill, who said, now we are talking about economy, about new order, new social contract, and he said that somebody who only thinks about economy is not a good economist. When you're thinking about economy, you should also think philosophically. You have to think about good life. So we can say that we should talk about economy addressing the values we have mentioned. But now we are talking about the economy, we're talking about indicators. I will give you a simple example. When we are talking about feeling happy when we are doing our job, so when you think of your employees, who is more productive at work? The one who is happy or the one who is frustrated? So if we reverse this discourse, when we start talking about values and happiness, about the values that are quite soft for the economy, maybe this is the moment when we follow this new social contract. So the happy employee is the better employee. So it's like instrumentalization. I'm talking more about the concept of social economy when both employees and employers and companies do not only exist to earn money. So when we look at startups, do they only want to earn money, be more productive? They also have some passions or ideas. Or family businesses are another example. Somebody who sets up a family business is very connected with this business, that afterwards this company cannot be sold. So it's not about instrumentalization. It's about some values that we are responsible. Employers and companies, we are all responsible.
Okay, Wawrzyniec, Smoczyński, do you agree with Ignacy Morawski that we have recognized that we can shape the future? Yeah, I do agree with Ignacy and how the initial concept, which was the base for the whole system, collapsed. It's great that politicians managed to create a new economic model based on climate protection. Where am I skeptical? Where is the difference between us? I don't think that the green economy and the green politics could reverse the trend, at least as quickly as we would need it. It means I don't believe we could change the reality and control the future as you have suggested. I think it would be much more difficult to impose the new economic order to reduce poverty. It's not only about the well-being, but about life due to climate change. I am partly convinced and partly not. Coming back to your question about neoliberalism, and I was put off topic a little bit, because first of all, I wanted to say that I am so happy to see you all here after such a long break. So it's really great to be here together. Neoliberalism ended as a concept because due to emotions, everything has become polarized, including the approach to social deal, social order. Let's take a look at Poland, ultra-conservative and nearly progressive parts, and extremes on the political stage. There is nothing in the middle. Initially, I referred to emotions, not because I disregard reflection, but I think that we have to become aware how strongly emotions determine all the common things, everything that is our collective life, before we construct intellectual solutions for political, economic, and social problems. Today's populist policy will not be changed through rational program. It is driven by general social fear evident in everything. In the majority of Western European countries, it is true as well. Following this conclusion, with a group of people who shared the same mindset, we established a foundation which, instead of thinking of intellectually of a plan for the future, tried to recognize the emotions that divide and polarize Poles, and looking for the mechanisms to start reconstructing the community, or to look for the components of community. This is what Natalia mentioned when we want to talk about building the foundation and looking for something which is common for us all. Due to pandemic, we had to carry out dialogues online, and it's a new form of community dialogue. And everything you mention is evident, including far-fetched polarization of mindsets, and also the fact that people who gain respect due to dialogue start to rediscover the common space. They are ready to look for solutions that are responsible for these divisions. That is why I am for being humble towards how people feel, and taking a step back to understand before we invent cold concepts. When we talk about sustainable development, we talk about sustainable power engineering and environment, but we forget sustainable anthropological development. We forget humans, and it's really important to remember them. Yeah, but we can respond with emotions to emotions and try to turn our vision into emotions that will inspire people, or we can try to think how to calm down the emotions. Does anybody have an idea how to do it? Maciej Bukowski? In my opinion, emotions are not bad. We simply need to consider how to take advantage of them. Wrath or anger. Sila Elworthy, who was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 3 times, said that anger is like fuel. You can spray it all over people and make an inferno, or you can treat it as a fuel inside you that will drive you towards a change. Yeah, but our public debate is filled with negative emotions. So the question is how to calm the emotions caused by social inequalities, frustrations by those left behind due to transformations, different motives, but there are some polarization mechanisms that strengthen them. Don't we exaggerate? I think we do exaggerate. We focus on what is here and now, the recent months and immediate future, especially in Poland. Looking at the history of the last century, there were lots of emotions, even after the Second World War, some rebellions of young people fight for equality in the USA, war in Vietnam, the generation which caused the war, the environmental movement was born. So I think that emotions have always been present in the public life. There used to be demonstrations, people were fighting for different things. That's nothing new. In Poland, we often exaggerate because we're quite moderate and we do not experience strong emotions. We don't even have a lot of hooligans in Poland. Looking at the political stage, we think that the war between political parties is so filled with emotions and saturated with emotions. Once you take a step back, you understand that our political parties, such as Civil Coalition or Polish Folks Association, are rather centric. The leftists are weaker in Poland. But it means that our center is more rightist than in Europe, especially during the shouting class, which expresses their opinions so loud on the internet. It can be more evident. But Poland is a moderate country, so it's not about the emotions we experience or that we express, but the fact that we are not capable of solving our issues in a skilled way. We have not learned how to do it institutionally. Even when we diagnose something, when I listen to Ignacy Morawski, whom I appreciate a lot, I want to say that he exaggerated a little bit with the change. He admitted that he used to be like that. I have been dealing with climate change for a dozen years or so, so something which is new for you is an old thing for me. And I already joined this discussion quite long. It has been going on in Europe for 30 years now. The whole conviction of the Western Europeans, especially from the Atlantic coast, that we can use administrative mechanism to influence the economy is an old concept from many years ago, from the French democracy. It was not about environment then, but about industrial policy in the 1950s and 60s, creating new economy. So there's nothing new in it. These are simply the new approaches which are forced by the times where we live, forced by the work of the ants mentioned by Ignacy. So these are the processes that nobody is capable of controlling. Wawrzyniec Smoczyński also mentioned that we'll not be able of establishing a new social contract. We can only respond to the circumstances. It can be done by political institutions or politicians in a wrong or right way. I would like to spend more time with Maciej Bukowski as he comes us down. Oh, nothing is going on. Is he really right? Ignacy wants to say something. Yeah, when we talk about the new social contract, we assume there is a decomposition of the world in which we used to live. It can be a neoliberal world, but I think this fissure is much deeper. It is rather against enlightenment, liberalism and neoliberalism, and even the left-wing party is the same. We challenge universalism, science, rational approach, the truth. This is where the fissure is. The discussion about neoliberalism is somewhere inside, but if we accept the composition of the world against the historical decompositions, it's really mild, it's really moderate. What about the decompositions and deconstruction of the world in the past? So now we live in calm times. Only the invasion in the Congress happened in the USA compared to historical revolts. It has been quite calm. So I would agree with Maciej, but I liked what Wawrzyniec said about the emotions. When humans lose direct contact and they meet others online, they lose the sense of shame and cautiousness, and we go full speed. So the question is it possible to calm down the emotions in the digital world? We're looking for new ideology, but it's naturally an intellectual process. So I wouldn't get away from it. Since we are nearly approaching the end of our discussion, assuming for a moment that changes are possible, that a new social contract can be established, for each of you, what would be the most important part of the contract? For me, the ability to discuss. I am really concerned about the decrease in the level of debates or discussions. It's rather like shouting your opinions. I am afraid of it. I don't want to live in such a world, and I don't want my kids to live in such a world. We have so many problems related to climate change, implementation of new technologies, energy aspects, and what will happen to us, and we are not able to discuss it. We are not able to strike a consensus. So that's what I'm afraid of. We as a society should learn how to talk. It's not about sharing the same opinions, but about having different opinions and being able to find some common spots to push us forward. Wawrzyniec? On the one hand, I would like to challenge what Maciej said and answer your question at the same time. If a new social contract was possible, referring to what Maciej said before, contains some answer. After the Second World War, the societies did not come to the previous world naturally. After the disaster, they established a kind of social contract, and they adopted a particular social and economic model. However, as for the future social contract, there are two important aspects. First and foremost, in the new future world, if we could construct it, we should restore the institution of social mixing. I know it sounds strange, but shortly, it is about what school used to be in the 19th century. Public school that everybody can graduate from, regardless of their social status, and that is why we as teenagers, as kids, can meet different people. Nowadays, it no longer happens because education has become commercialized. The other aspect, which is inevitable but poses a certain opportunity, is to increase direct democracy components through technology. The problem we complain about related to social media, overproduction of opinions, and everybody's need to share their opinions is the evidence of the fact that people have access to this common broadcasting medium, but don't always share them. We are members of the representative democracy that we inherited from the 19th century. So I would include these two. So social mixing and common decision making. Ignacy? What are you dreaming of? When you ask this question, I feel there's storm in my head, and it's really difficult, the thunder, to choose. Let me focus on economic aspects. The world of the future is the world with significantly reduced economic risk. The economic life where humans will not be afraid to lose their property because of their credit exchange rate. They will not be afraid of their financial status being degraded. I don't have a good plan how to reach it, but I think that establishing major objectives is not wrong. So generally, I would like the world to be less risky from the economic point of view. Okay, Maciej, some soothing words? Perhaps we have everything and we need nothing more. Thank you. I'm not sure I can share some calm. I'm like the god hanging somewhere above. This is my position on the screen, at least. We as the humankind became tamed animals. This is what happened throughout thousands of years of our evolution. We are much milder than we used to be. That is why there are not so many violent outbreaks as we used to have in the past. We don't have to fight that much, and we perceive the world as a not so black and white. If we are able to maintain such balance, it's not going to be bad. However, not everybody enjoys the same wealth. There are some ambitious uprising empires. Mobilization will not come from democratic or capitalist systems from the inside, but rather from the outside. In my opinion, contrary to the trendy ideas, there is no internal crisis. There are different moods which turn this way or another. But when an external crisis comes from the authoritarian states that are increasing their power from let's say from the poor south, and the demons of the past might come back. However, since we are in a conference organized by a liberal think tank, let us remain optimistic, because liberals share a positive outlook. I think that we'll keep on going like that, but not as Ignacy mentioned, that we are always on the safe side, that we don't have to be afraid of anything. Thank you very much. So it seems that the new social contract should be based on values, discussion, dialogue, social mixing, safety and security. But perhaps, well, the situation is good, so let's stick to what we have. I would like to thank you for participating in our panel. That's it from us. Thank you and goodbye.